Welcome to another edition of the Garden Report. I'm Jeff Goodman. He's Bob Ryan, and we got a lot to talk about. We were so optimistic last week about the Boston Celtics, your Boston Celtics, Bob Ryan. Today, not so optimistic after that stinker the other night.
You're not going to overreact ever to one game, positive or negative. But the fact is that certain things are just disturbing.
Yeah.
And the overall lack of defensive effort and then the whole microcosm of the day was that awful exchange in which Tatum sloppily, casually bounces the ball back after the inbounds to Brown, I guess it was. And Terry Rozier, ex-teammate, having a good day, Steele says, "Hey, you really? I'll take that," and lay it in. Lackadaisical, that was unforgivable. And that kind of summed up their whole day at both ends of the floor, particularly the defensive end. Charlotte was making shots, but, a lot easier when you're playing horse by yourself, So I guess what we're saying is, just when I was ready to put my hand on the stove, Jeff, I have to pull it back.
That's the problem with this team, Bob.
Yeah.
That's the whole problem with this team is they're kind of Jekyll and Hyde. And obviously, if you've got a team with this much talent, there's going to be some days where they look really, really good. But let's face it, how can you trust this team going into the postseason?
No, I mean, that's it. That's you can't. It's the only way to put it. You can't. We know what the potential is. We know what they could be. And that's what's annoying, because we've seen enough glimpses of it. And this is, meanwhile, happening at a time when we're seeing a little more life from, I shouldn't say life, but ability from Kemba, which we've talked about it. They need that.
It's been better.
They need that. Yeah. And he's starting to come back physically to be a good player, and had a great game the game before that. And so once again, just when it's always something, it's the old Rosanna, that it's always something. Gilda Radner, it's always something. And there always seems to be something with this team, right? This year, the last 2 years.
What do you do though? Like, Bob, all right, here's the big thing. If you're Danny Ainge, what do you do? What can you do? You got Kemba making $36 million next year. You got Jaylen Brown for 3 more years at, I don't know if it's a bargain, but at 25, 28, 29. You've obviously got Tatum at some of the similar numbers for the next 4 years. What can you do? What do you try to do with this franchise? Because if you're Danny Ainge, don't you have to be looking at it right now of like, we got to make a move? Evan Fournier probably isn't enough. We've got to do something to kickstart this, because if we bring the same core back again next year, what is really going to change?
Yeah, I know. It's a good, and Kemba will be a year older, and he's going to get hurt at some point probably, and that's true. You got to go out and find yourself. Is there a point guard in the draft? They got to go out and find yourself a point guard. We know what Pritchard is. Pritchard's going to be around for 10 years. He's going to be a wonderful auxiliary player, but he's not going to be a guy you can lean on.
No.
So, prove me wrong, Peyton. That's fine. I'll be so happy to go with a mea culpa if you could prove me wrong. I like you, young man, but I don't want to overrate you. It's a great question. Of course, you mentioned these numbers and the untradeable. This all of sport. I don't care what sport you're talking about. Doesn't matter. They get themselves in these circumstances with these contracts. The money is so obscenely ridiculous, and they get these contracts, and then you can't get rid of people. Oh, and this is universal. This isn't endemic to basketball. It's every single sport. Okay, great question. That's why we pay Danny the big money. But it must be so aggravating to know what could be. All right, I'll go. Let's start with you tell me, because you're. You know how much I love him, but is there a market for Smart?
Yeah, listen, he's got an expiring contract at $13 million next year. So yes, I think there is a market.
But does that make you better if you find out? I don't know.
Well, yeah, only if you can add somebody. Now, again, you're not gonna be great defensively if you get rid of them. But you're gonna take a hit there and in the toughness department. But you got to do something. I feel like you have to do something, and I just don't know what you're going to get for Kemba Walker. I don't think you're going to get enough for Kemba. I don't think you can trade Tatum. I don't think you do trade Tatum.
I don't want to. Although,
right.
I just
he gets frustrating. He's been frustrating.
Yeah, he's getting. I didn't think we'd ever have to worry about him. You know what I'm saying?
Again, who has he had to look at and say, I mean, Kemba, yes, he can look at Kemba and say, I should do it
Well,
this way. But
when we had Mars, I don't know. When we had
No,
Mars, was he?
no.
No. It's not Tristan, apparently, huh?
well, Tristan just isn't good enough. Like Tristan's a good locker room guy from everything I've been told forever, but he's just not good enough. So I don't know how much Tatum even looks at the way Tristan Thompson, Tristan Thompson has never had any pressure on him, right? Never had any pressure on him to be the guy of a franchise. It's not like Jayson Tatum does anything wrong or disrespectful. I feel like, again, I keep going back to it. It's this Kemba as a point guard with Jaylen and Tatum, just having three guys that are just not ball movers, not guys that make it easy for one another. They all have to manufacture on their own. And that, again, listen, I'm not saying I paid Gordon Hayward what Charlotte paid him, but you do miss a guy, and he's not even on the court. That's half the embarrassment of the other day was you don't have LaMelo Ball or Gordon Hayward, and you're never in that game. Like, it's a joke. And you had all your guys pretty much. So I think they just missed that guy who makes things easier for everybody else. And that's not Marcus Smart. Like, who is it? They don't have one guy on the team, not one guy on that team who makes people better consistently. Who? Tell me one.
Well, no, there's a little smidgen of that in Pritchard, but
a little.
That's the closest that I can.
Right. I mean, go down the list.
Tristan
Thompson, Marcus. I'm not even talking about, again, the big three, as we call them. Grant Williams, Aaron Nesmith, Pritchard, Robert Williams, Shemmy, Carson Edwards. What do they all have in common? None of them make people better consistently. None of them. Like, Tatum can, but the problem with Tatum is, again, he's a scorer at his core. That's what he's been.
Yeah.
That's what he knows. He can make people better, but you almost don't want him doing that as much. You need him scoring the ball.
I wish Grant Williams were 2 inches taller. That'd be nice.
Yeah, I still say they should look at what the market is for Jaylen Brown. I really believe that. I believe you.
And we did talk about him before the season, and you were, I would say, a little skeptical.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were. And then he went off and had a terrific couple months and legitimately got himself into the All-Star game. And he has some days, boy, when that shot's falling, and boy, he can take it to he can finish. He can do a lot of things. Yeah, I'm
again. Jaylen Brown and Robert Williams and a first-round pick for Bradley Beal. Would you do it? And I think Beal's contract expires after next year, but he's tight with Tatum. That's the one I would do.
Interesting. Beal had 45 against in that overtime. No, he's a huge scorer. He's leading the league. He's battling.
One more year, and then a player option at $34 million. So that trade could be done financially. You can figure it out. I mean, sure, would you do Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart for Beal?
Oh,
I know you don't like it, but you got to do something.
I know.
Otherwise,
you're making me feel bad.
I know, but don't you have to do something if you're Danny Ainge and shake it up and try something?
Yeah. Well, I think yes. Since we both anticipate a great unhappiness when the playoffs are over, especially if they wind up playing in the play-in.
Oh, if they're in the play-in and they get knocked out before they get to the real thing, I think you got to worry about Brad Stevens then.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think Brad, listen, I don't know if you got to win a first-round series to keep his job, but I think if he gets in the play-in and doesn't get in the real thing, then you really got to worry about Brad Stevens. And I know he's got a lot of money on the hook with the Celtics, and I know Danny loves them, but again, maybe that's the change, right? Maybe the change isn't with the players for Danny. I think it's one or the other. If you go out in the play-in or maybe even in the first round, Danny's he can't come back with the same coach and the same players.
No, I think I would have to definitely agree with that. So I think we can table it We can leave it right there.
We'll table it for now. I'm sure we will come back to it after the postseason, and we'll talk more about this. Obviously,
This is not a discussion I would have thought we would be having,
Yeah.
3 months ago. I'm just not happy. It shouldn't. Somehow it shouldn't be. But even with all the, but everybody, hey, can't use. Everybody's got injury. Everybody's had COVID reaction.
Right. Yes.
And so you're not exclusive. You're just one of many. Yeah.
There you have it. Bob Ryan, Jeff Goodman, CLNS Media on the Garden Report. We'll see you next week.